Hey class, this is Professor Nick Sensky at UNC Charlotte, and what I'm going to have today is sort of a revision of what we did in lab on Thursday. I'm going to try to clarify things a little bit, kind of help you guys make your diagrams. So this is an introduction to diagramming in Autocad, and we're going to talk about what the strengths of working in Autocad are when you're creating diagrams, how we can leverage that, and we're going to start in AutoCAD, and we're going to look at the site at different scales and convert those to diagrams. And then we're going to take those diagrams into Adobe Illustrator and work on line weight, line type, and color. And then we're going to compose those for a layout that's going to go to a PDF. So you've got your two files that I posted. They're the site at two different scales. The first one is the entire site, and this is the Charlotte NC Spring 2011 original. You can see it's the entire city of Charlotte with some topo overlay and then some closer in scale drawings of the cemetery site itself. Okay, so when you have this file, the first thing you probably want to do is think about, again, diagramming at different scales. And one scale might be the relation of the site itself to the rest of the city of Charlotte. Okay, so I'm working at this very large scale, and then the second scale would be the kind of whole site itself, and then the third might be your site 1 and site 2 that you guys have. Okay, so again, I'm going to start with the largest site, and this is a technique. You don't have to do this exactly, but this is a technique that might help you with things. The problem is right now we've got so many layers on; it's hard to get a sense of what's going on with it. And we want to do is turn off things that aren't really relevant at that larger scale. And so at the first scale, at the largest scale, the things that aren't relevant are probably the topo. Okay, and I'm using AutoCAD 2012 for PC right now, and you guys might be using Mac. Again, the commands are going to be the same. The way that you operate the commands might be different, but that's the kind of thing that you can always look up online. What I'm interested in right now are like the principles involved. Okay, so the principle here is to try to eliminate information that's not really necessary and make it easier for me to understand my site. So one way to do that is to pick a layer. I don't need the topo really when I'm looking at the entire city. It's not really important to me. So if I choose that layer, you can see that it shows up here under my layers bar. And what I can do with that is I can just turn it off with the light bulb. Okay, and that gets rid of quite a bit already. And then this yellow layer is also going to get turned off. Okay, what else have we got here? So this layer is a stream. Probably don't need that either. These train track pieces. Yeah, could be relevant, might not be. But what we've got are, let's see, this layer is probably not. I'm not even sure what that is. Oh, layer 0. Curves. Maybe turn some of these off. Okay. Let's put those back on. You can always undo that operation. Let's see here. It's trees. Okay, so turn those on. Let's see here. This is just getting a sense of things. Okay, benches are definitely a small scale. I don't need those. Probably don't need. It's like monuments. Those are probably a bit larger scale than we want. So it's a bit cleaner. Even the plots actually are probably. Let's go ahead and turn those off. And what's this layer? Seems like a leftover layer. Okay, so pretty good. Seems to be a lot cleaner. So at this scale, and these. Let's take a look at this layer. Ooh, okay. So you've got kind of the plots, and you've got the buildings seem to be on another layer here. Yeah, buildings. So it depends on what you want to be talking about. You know, you can always turn off and on. Yeah, those are roads, train tracks. But, you know, for instance, you know, you might talk about how your site relates to the major roads in the city. You might talk about how it relates to the grid. So, you know, being able to turn certain things off and on can be really helpful. Let's go ahead and turn on everything that we think we're going to need for this. So I'll probably turn the tracks back on. And the buildings. That's about right. Okay, so let's take all these and let's select them. And we'll right click, you can say copy, selection. And let's start a new file. It's default template. And go ahead and paste. Clipboard. Oh, you know what? Let's go back actually. Okay, so go back to our drawing. Select, right click, clipboard, copy. Copy with base point. Let's pick the corner here. Okay. And it's going to take a little bit because it's kind of a big file. Okay, and then let's go to our new file. There we go. Okay, and then clipboard, paste. And we zoom out. Oh yeah, we need an insertion point. I'm just going to do 0, 0. That's kind of the idea. Yeah, let's zoom out. So zoom, Z, all, all. And it'll give me the whole thing at once. Okay, so now I've got, and the advantage of this is, okay, so now I've got a separate file, but see, I've got a lot fewer layers. So I'm just working with things at this large scale. I can begin to draw that way. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save As, and I'm going to call this cemetery diagrams city scale. I don't know, it's kind of verbose, but that way I know what it is. Okay. And so what you can do is keep all these layers, and you can, depending on what you want to show, you know, might just be interested in showing the roads versus the cemetery. I might turn off some of these other layers. Oops, I won't do that. Turn the tracks off here. So I could begin to take, you know, this piece. And actually, an interesting thing is you're going to want to actually, you know, show your site. So we could, depending upon those images that we got from Betsy, I'm just gonna rough this out, but you know, draw in roughly where your site is. And here it might actually be, and you can open up these to get different commands, and you can put them back in. Go no ellipse here. And then again, this is a diagram, so it doesn't have to be exact. And then I can go ahead and turn off the cemetery roads. I'll move this around actually. So I've got that, and you know, I might be interested in looking at major roads versus minor roads, you know, that kind of thing. I might be interested in looking at just, you know, this small piece of the city. So I'm going to do a couple different things here. So I've got these on a layer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy these. So copy. this is one of the advantages of computing, right? Is that I can just make a quick copy of this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a new layer. And actually, I can just do layer. Yeah, you can type, if you type in layer, you get this layer window, and then you can dock it. I just kind of pulled it over to the side here. And if you're doing a lot of work with layers, this kind of thing is really useful to have, which is actually what we're doing, a lot of work with layers. So this way I can go in and then go right click, and I can say new layer. I'm going to call this roads, or actually diagram roads, D roads. And I can pick my objects. I'm actually going to p-edit these. P-edit multiple. Yes. Join. Okay. Just like in the demo here, I've made these all one. Okay. So I've got a copy of this. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and move these, so I can right click these, and I can say I can put them on this layer here. Actually, there's an easier way to do this. Okay, so all I do is pick those objects, and then I choose the layer, so D roads, and they're going to go onto that layer. And if I want to change something about that layer, I can go in here, I can change the color of it, to red or something. Okay, and that's different. So then I go in and I can turn these off and on. So having the layers palette open is really helpful. And again, I just did that by typing in layer, and that's going to pop up. You can close it just by clicking the X, and then it'll come back. So layer, there you go. Okay. So began a little diagram. Then what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to go ahead and make another layer for that. New layer, and we call it D roads 2. And we go ahead and turn all these. Change a different color. And I'm gonna to change the layer. I'm just gonna change the layer. So they were on roads, now they're on D roads, and it'll say that. But I can turn it back on again. Okay. So, and you can say, okay, why aren't the objects the color they're supposed to be? That's because they're set up for the other color. So you want to go color by layer and see, then it'll be right. Okay. So that is gonna give me a diagram that I'm working on. I'm going to go ahead and turn off that other layer. I'm going to go ahead and delete these. And so what I can do with this layer is I might be able to go in and even make a third layer here. Roads 2. Roads 3. Okay. And these are, to change the alphabetical order, I just did like a click on this, and that's going to change it. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start picking the major roads and the major kind of highway pieces. That are surrounding my site. And I might have this wrong, but just to get the general idea. And you should use the satellite photo to reference this to get this right. But basically, just choosing all the major highways. kind of off ramps and on ramps and that sort of thing. And it's just going to keep selecting, and then again change the layer to D-roads, and that layer's turned off, so I turn it back on again. Okay, so I've got that layer, and anything, if you see something that's not on there, just go ahead and you can just keep adding it to that layer. Got all this stuff. Okay, getting close here. So that's the highway. Okay, so got that, and add this last one here. So these are the lines for one diagram, and this is just using the lines of the piece and a couple of things that I drew. Okay, so we can go back and let's go ahead and turn on some other layers here. So that's kind of one idea. That's something that we can begin to develop. And again, this is a very large scale diagram. You could always go ahead and crop part of this out, but it's one idea. And let's look at another idea here. What other things can we talk about at this sort of large scale? There's if you go in and actually, if the building's turned off, you can go in and you can draw. Yeah. Look at the blocks. You can look at the roads versus your site. Let's see here. So you take what you've got here, and you can actually think about a few different things from this roads diagram that you made. Let's turn some stuff off here. Yeah. So take this and copy it and paste it next to it again. And you can think about things like, the site access. So you could pick, all the roads that are, accessing the site. Just need some idea. And again, we're not picking everything. We're picking the roads that are important to reaching the cemetery. We can always undo some of this too. So diagramming is about understanding how this works. So you have to think about the approach. So if you come from here, if you come from this way, this seems to be a major road here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. It's for only because I want to separate these out a bit. So go here. These are now part of D-roads 4. And then I can turn off these layers. And okay, so go ahead and trim this out. Oops. I'm actually drawing on a layer that's turned off, so that's no good. Okay, so here's, so again, go layer 0. What I'm kind of drawing is like a trim box, because I don't need all this stuff. So, let's say trim, pick the thing, and I'm going to go ahead and turn out this piece. Excuse me. There. I could do a fence too if I wanted to, and then I can go ahead and just do like erase, so delete these other pieces here. Actually, good time to save too. Why not? Okay. I can delete the trim box. So now I just got an isolated piece, and this again is kind of talking about access to it. And this is kind of a minor piece of the diagram. Actually, I might have trimmed away some stuff I didn't want there. Let's see. Yeah, let's be it. Okay. Well, it's a diagram anyway. You can always just draw some new lines here. In fact, I could go in and go to the roads layer, and if I seem to be, missing some lines, I can just add them in. Let's just draw on this layer. There. It seems like I've got a lot in there though. Seems like that magenta layer's got some kind of a missing line here too. You're gonna have to add some things, and some things are not gonna really show up. Okay. Let's actually take a look at these cemetery roads for a minute in relation to the major roads. Yeah, so it seems like, well, let's just go ahead and copy these. You can always turn them off. Okay, so you got that. Then I can say copy, and the base point is going to be a known point, so I'm going to pick this point because I know where that is here. Okay. And it really seems like the only roads that really access it are actually along up here. This road seems to drive past it. And again, I'm kind of speculating. I don't know the site that well, but you have to begin to read these things. So what do we want to say about this? It seems like everything is accessible that way. So we get a sense of the roads that bound that kind of form a boundary, and we get a sense of this kind of access road. But then again, this is very large scale, so that's all I'm really interested in. I'm not maybe interested in these like smaller roads, so that just gives me good reference to understand how this works. So it seems like this is really the main access. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my road layers. Let's turn it off, and then just delete these. Okay. So again, using the layers just as references, for these things. And I want to get rid of all these other gridded layers too. So turn that off. Turn that off. Get rid of my trim box. So let's go ahead and hang on to that in case we need it for something else. But I do want to get rid of these layers. Okay, let's roads. Yeah. Okay. So again, this could be considered, just the kind of secondary and primary roads in the way that it relates to Charlotte. Here we're looking specifically at kind of site access, and the magenta are the important ones. These are actually not as important in this diagram. They're just kind of forming a boundary. They're just sort of suggesting where that fits in compared to this over here. So, okay, again, save a copy. So those are just some examples of some larger scale things. The other thing that I might want to look at, that you might want to diagram, are the city grids in relationship to the site proper. Okay, so you might actually do something where you actually define. Let's go ahead and copy this. So another collection here. I'm going to go ahead and maybe, again, attempt to define the edge of the site using the roads that are around it. So this piece, that piece. And probably this road here. Shift click to get rid of that. Okay, pretty good. So that, I would kind of say, forms the kind of bounds of the site. I'm gonna go and make a new layer. I'm just gonna call D site. D for diagram, by the way, and make that green, because why not? And let's go click on the thing, go to D site. Okay, good. So that's there. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off most of my layers here. I'm going to turn back on 0 and make sure the roads are turned on. And so what I'm interested in is maybe the different kind of grids that are present. Maybe that's something that's interesting to me. There doesn't actually seem to be this grid seems to be important. It seems to be coming in. This seems to be a lot more kind of fluid and everything. So that actually interests me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lock this layer. And what lock means, you can see it kind of fades, is that I can choose it, but I can't actually, draw it or anything. I can't actually affect it, and that's good. So I can use it as a tracing piece. And so what I'm going to kind of do, I'm going to go to layer 1 here, 0. I'm just going to draw a kind of grid here. I'm copying this line. This is like more abstract, which is what I want. It's more abstract than tracing. Because all I want to do is establish the idea that there's some order here that maybe this project can respond to. Okay. That's pretty good. Okay, and then I'll do the same thing. Actually, I'm going to do, since it's a grid, I'm going to copy this and just kind of paste it, and then I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees so that I get a clean grid. There we go. Okay, then I can. And it's not, again, this is kind of an abstraction. It's not actually showing. Now that didn't work. What I'm going to do actually, so it's not like a 90-degree grid, I suppose, is just kind of fudge it. Okay, then I'm going to copy this. Sometimes things don't work too well. That's okay. There. And you know, again, this is not. This is just kind of an abstraction, but I think it kind of establishes this idea for us. Just really quick, take a look at this. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. So there's definitely some things that we can do. Just going to create a guideline here, and I can just trim those things apart. Turn snaps off here. So I did a fence, and I'm just going to right click, and it's going to, hey, that worked really well. Okay, saved us a lot of clicking. Okay, so there's that kind of grid there, and then maybe I'm interested in this stuff that's kind of not so gridded, so I'm going to go back to, I'm going to turn this layer off. It's here with me. And actually, no, I want to see it. Then we go back to the layer that I locked, unlock it, and everything turns back on again. And I'm going to kind of just get a sense of the major roads that join the site, that join the grid. So we're just getting a sense of, you know, how the urban fabric might kind of join it. And it seems like something's happening here that is not happening off to this side. Certainly not here. I think this is where we're getting into, yeah, more of the highway on that end. So we're beginning to understand the site a bit more. Oh shoot, when I did that, I lost all my selections. Alright, so let's go back. Let's see here. Grab this guy and this. Let's see what else is going on. Oh yeah, this one. The idea here is to draw this, but also to think about it. How the site works. We draw to think, not just to draw things. Okay, so is that. And these are the kind of major points here. Okay, let's call that good. So we can do layer. 5, and make it some other color, yellow. Oh, turned off. Okay, let's turn it back on again. Okay, and then we can turn off this again. Turn these back on. So let's take a look at this again. Maybe we got that right. I think we missed something here. Okay. I think this road's possibly important as well. Let's put that on the D roads 5 layer. Okay, so so again, the idea of this is to just talk a little bit about the kind of fabric of the city that we're joining. And in that sense, I actually think that, yeah, so this is kind of a major road. Kind of got this covered here. This seems like it might be something too. You know, this might say something about the axiality of it, like, you know, certainly maybe building off the grid. So it's really good to keep these, you know, these things on separate layers for you. Yeah, it's pretty good. Looks like we got something missing on that layer. Let's go to the D site and add a little line here. Turn snaps back on. Okay. So good. So we got. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off a couple layers here. This one back on. I don't need this one. And I'm gonna go ahead and actually, I've got this on a layer. This needs to be a different layer, so D site, B roads 6. This isn't the best organization. I don't recommend you do this. You probably want better layer names for what you're doing. Okay, let's see what we got here. Let's turn these back on. D roads. Okay, so we've got, you know, what you might consider, you know, city fabric. We've got something that looks at site access, and something that looks at, you know, just kind of road conditions. So these are different kinds of ideas about how we might understand the site. And again, the idea was that we started with the kind of base map, and we kind of isolated what we wanted out of it. We copied it, you know, modified it, copied it, modified it, make use of layers to kind of organize things, and you know, trim things when it's necessary. Again, that's kind of a, you know, that layer is just there for in case you want to use that as a trim again. But I'm going to go ahead and move it. I didn't move it to the layer that I wanted to. So D site, D road 6. There we go. Okay. So we got all this stuff I made. Looks pretty good. And of course you could do more. You could take one of these diagrams and then trace over it again. You could certainly abstract some of this stuff away. Not all the stuff has to just be selected from the site. Remember, like when I did this, I didn't really want to just pick and choose things. I wanted to really show this idea that there's a grid here, okay? And it's not really necessary that it be exact. It just has to get the idea of it. And again, I think you can kind of get the idea of the site just through a few lines, maybe not the exact lines. Okay, if you really wanted to be sure about it, you could go through and trim out some of this stuff. You could trim, get this cleaned up, things like that. But the idea is just to present something so you can think about the site and communicate your ideas about it. Okay, so go ahead and export that to Illustrator. So to do that, I'm going to go save as, and I'm going to save it as an Autocad 2000 or the R12 DXF. So let's make a copy of it. Okay, so I've got that. I'm going to open up Illustrator, say File Open, and I can take that file that I made. It'll take a second here. It might generate a big file because it's actually removing a lot of the stuff that AutoCAD does to optimize it, but it's the most compatible file format. That's why we do that. And it's going to say, what size. I'm just going to say OK. This file we have of the city of Charlotte is kind of big. It's got a lot of smaller kind of details in it. So actually, let's go to layers, and we can probably delete. I'm going to shift click, delete these, and that will actually cut down on some of the file size. Okay. So the things that we did, this layer actually, the 0, I can turn off. So what I can do though is I can take these drawings, and if I have my layers, sorted, if things are different, if things are on different layers, I can take those and I can just assign them certain colors or certain weights, and that makes my job really easy. Another thing you can do is further separate them out into layers. But if you want to just change everything that's on a layer really quick, just click on the little circle button, and then I can go down to this here, which is a color swatch, and I can go into swatches, and I can say open swatch library, default, and I can say basic RGB is fine, or CMYK if you'd like, and then say I've got different grayscales. So here I might actually, I'm going to make this black. Black is actually the one you want to make everything pretty much at first, and then we're going to go into the stroke weight, and at the scale I want to make that pretty fine. That's actually what I care about the most. Now you can go in, and it actually looks like I've got, you need these on separate layers, so I'm actually to go in and turn all these off, turn these back on. So this way, by turning all those layers off, I actually get at just certain pieces of things that I want. So I can select this, and then I can choose a new layer, and I can move them to that layer. So I can go in and send to current layer. So object arrange, send to current layer. So that layer's off. So same thing here. Choose these. Layer 9. Arrange, send to current layer. Okay. And now these are all different, which is what I want. And I can do the same thing with these as well. And it should probably give them better layer names. So range, send to layer, range. Send to current layer. And to change the layer name, just double click. And you can make folders for these too, well, actually, you can put them inside of other layers. So I could, do this, and I could say major roads, and then let's turn on some more layers here. Okay, so we got. Let's see. Okay, so these roads, and this is actually all this one is. So D roads 2, and I'm holding down Control on PC, and this D roads 1, and I can put these under major roads. I'm just clicking and dragging, and so now they're all under major roads. Okay, and go through and click these, and these again are black. Actually, I'm going to go swatches. Yeah, so they're black. And actually, I do kind of want that to be a heavy dark line. That's kind of the idea. And then if I go into layers, D roads, I'll make this a bit lighter, so maybe a 0.5. They seem pretty thick. Okay. Another thing you can do too, and I talked about this on Thursday, is if you do a little swap here, you can change it to a fill. And so that might actually be more what I'm interested in. Actually seems a little bit dark to me, the whole thing. So change this weight to, change these to a 0.5, and go through and change these to something very fine. And I can actually type something in too, so I could type this in as a 0.1, depending on what I wanted to show. Okay, so that's kind of an interesting diagram. Let's go through, let's make another one. Move this up to its own layer. Let's call this site access. Okay, and looks like these are on that layer. Let's turn off this one. Okay, so site access. Yeah, these are on that layer, so put that in site access. These are on that layer, so there we go. Okay, so let's turn these all on again. And so again, you know, what's going to be really important here, I might actually go through and do the same thing and make these solid. Then I'm going to take this roads layer, make it black. This is actually the important one on this layer, so I'm going to leave those really dark. And then I'm going to go ahead and look at that last layer, the blue one. And those are important, but I'm not really that interested in them. So you could make them lighter. You could, if you wanted to, since they're still kind of major roads. You could choose them and you can make them like a gray. Notice the order matters here. So if I pull these below, you can see that the lines actually, you know, are actually underneath the black ones. So the order matters. Okay. Okay. So that might actually be a diagram that just shows, it really shows major axis, but it shows it in relation to those other roads. Seem like I have a little problem here. So what I'm going to do is actually just use the pen tool and just kind of fix this so that I've got this fixed. There we go. Now I can go back and got my diagram. Not too bad. Let's zoom out. Okay, so that's maybe a diagram. And you know, you could actually go in AutoCAD and you could actually abstract this as just a line. That would actually make it probably a bit more legible. And you could do it in Illustrator too. For example, I'm going to go ahead and lock this layer. See the lock there? So I don't accidentally choose it. And using the pen tool, I'm going to go ahead and draw this, just a simple line, and that's on its own layer. Then I can turn this off, and I'm gonna make this a gray line, and I'm gonna make it a beefy line, so to just kind of suggest the highway. And so that's a really abstract way of showing that. Again, I just have a very large line. Maybe it's too much. You don't want to overemphasize it. I mean, I could even make it a lighter gray if I wanted to. Just so that you have a common vocabulary. If you do something like that, you want to do it consistently. whenever you talk about that particular feature. Okay, so we've got these kinds of, and again, here we emphasized it because we're interested in the relationship between the site and the kind of major and minor roads, but here the major idea, the major roads are the access, the side streets. Okay, and then for the last diagram, we go ahead and talk about, I don't know, site grid. Let's start turning things on here. Turn that one off. Okay, so I can choose all these, shift click, control click to deselect, and then put them under that. I can actually just delete that layer. Oh, it's always a good idea to save. Probably want to save this. So to save my Adobe Illustrator file. And again, I might make this the same as I've been doing. It's pretty consistent, pretty logically consistent. The grid, let's see, the grid's is one thing. I make it a certain size. The side streets here are going to be black. And let's see what the arteries are going to be. Might also make them, oops, 0.5. And here, you know, there might be some kind of a hierarchy in between the different kinds of roads. Again, I might not care about them that much, so they might actually become a bit lighter. So they're the same weight as these roads, but they're not really that important to this. So I make them a different color, gray, and that actually de-emphasizes them. And then lastly, I might take the site and again make it black, but I might change the line type, so I can change it to a dashed line. And that's actually not very useful. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and join this together, actually. So object, path, join. I want that to be all one shape. And let's go ahead and change the dashed line to something else. It's not very good. Can kind of keep playing with it here. Scale is going to be different for you than it is for me. So you might need to experiment a bit. And it's still not very good. But the idea is to kind of create something that looks like a dashed line, you know, because suggesting where the site is, because it's not really like a real thing. I kind of keep doodling with it for a bit here. You could do fractions, you could do 0.5. You can also change the type of cap, which may help if you want square or miter dense. Or rounded. The weight of the line is going to matter too. You know, and if this is seated a bit too close, I kind of like the offset of that, so I might even just kind of flub that a bit, just to create the idea that it's inset. And again, you might notice a few problems, so you can go ahead and join some things together with the pen tool to kind of fix them up. Yeah, this actually seems like it's kind of out of place. Well, maybe not. Let's take a look at that. I suppose. So that's, you know, kind of talking about the grid, kind of talking about access. And actually, if that, you might de-emphasize those other pieces and emphasize the grid more. So you can go in and, you know, really knock down the weight a bit and this layer and really knock it down. Actually, you don't want to do that because that actually just chooses the one object. So choose the layer that it's on, then go ahead and knock that down. You know, so maybe in this grid, everything is really the same. I mean, in this diagram, everything's the same. But what you're really talking about is this kind of grid. Or, you know, here, make this black. Oops. I don't know what I did there. There we go. And make the grid gray. Yeah. It says something different. I like it better the other way though. In fact, I might make the roads all gray. So that says something different too. Okay. So depending on what you're trying to say, can you kind of adjust your diagrams? Yeah, kind of experiment too. Turn some things off. See, that's kind of an interesting diagram. I almost kind of like it better without the roads. Or maybe they're just extremely light. Yeah, you know what? I almost like it better without. And that really says something about the kind of fabric that surrounds it and those roads. Interesting. So those are a couple of different ideas for diagrams, and I'm sure you can do better. But you know, they're clear from far away. You know, they're emphasizing certain ideas, and they're mostly black and white with some red for accent. And you know, the red isn't even necessary. I mean, I could go in and if I made these black, probably be fine. And that's actually a sign of a good diagram. You have a high enough contrast, you know, contrasting your ideas even, that it's not really necessary. Go ahead and pull this out a little bit. But again, I'd like a little bit of separation between. And it's a diagram, so it's not real. Okay, so a couple of different ideas about how you think about the site. Really just looking at access and roads in this case, but I think that gives you an idea of how you can do things in Illustrator to create different diagrams. And you know, when you're laying them out, you know, you've got these on layers, but you can choose the whole thing, and you can use the grips to, you know, kind of move them around, to lay them out, to scale them like we've seen in Photoshop. Okay. One thing you want to watch out for is that if you do scale them, is to make sure the line weights stay the same proportions. If you scale them, you know, manually, they should. Otherwise, what you can do is, if you have everything drawn at the same scale and you need it to be a different size, you can go into Object, Transform, Scale, and then you can actually type in what you're doing. And you want to uncheck. Well, I mean, you can check this for yourself, but you just want to be cognizant of whether you need to scale the strokes and effects or not. So if I scale it 50%, and see here, it actually preserves the same kind of scale. And then if I do it without the scale and effects, actually do a copy of this and I'll show you. So you got that copy and this copy with, actually, yeah. So you can see the difference here. When you do scale them, it kind of is going to preserve the idea of it. But if you choose not to, these are the same that they were originally set to. So that's 0.1, 0.5. Okay. So just know the difference when you're laying your thing out. and be consistent. It's always the idea. You want these to read as a set of diagrams. So you want to try to avoid as much as possible creating too many different variations in terms of weight, in terms of ideas with things. Okay, so these might actually want to be a different weight because you didn't really use that weight over here. So you might choose that, and maybe those want to be 0.25. It makes it a little bit harder to read, but you can see it kind of makes it a more consistent set. And maybe just wants to be the same as that. You can use the eyedropper to pick up the same style. So, or maybe this ends up being reduced to this style. Okay. It's not quite right because it actually is a major highway, so you might think about that. So hopefully that helps you understand how the path to Illustrator works. And then once you've done your layout, you can change the size of your board by going to Document Setup, Artboards. Then you can change the width and height of the board here. So I can say 36 by 24, and then press Enter. And that's actually going to change the size of the entire. Let me zoom out here. Size of the board. Oh man, these are tiny. So you can lay these out on your board. You can make any size board you want. You can also just go to File, New, and you can make a new board this way, and then you can copy paste them into that board. When you're all done, just go to File, Save As, and you're going to want to save it as a PDF. That's it. Okay. So that's generally how you'll follow through the assignment. But I hope this kind of clarifies things a little bit from what we talked about on Thursday. Sorry for rambling here. If you have any questions, let me know. We'll check back with you on this on Tuesday. Thanks.